to make that focus and emphasis and composition that we've been talking about more appropriate to each scene. So that's why we put blocking notes. The other thing you can do at this point is you start working on cue sheets. There's a lot of paperwork involved in being a lighting designer. Cue sheets, once you've read the play, you can actually kind of start making up cue sheets. And when you see a designer run through, you might add cues or you might subtract cues, especially once you see where people are, if I need a whole bunch of movement on stage to make the change of focus happen with what they're doing with their action, that kind of thing. But a cue sheet is, I might have a couple of examples here. It's basically a list. Like here we have a basic sound or lighting cue list sheet. And you'll see this column has the cue number. We usually number the cues, usually numerically in order, like you would start the beginning of the play with cue number 1. Your next cue would be cue number 2. Or if you have like doubts about how much you might add in between, what a lot of lighting designers do is if I want to go ahead and start writing in my cue sheet, but I haven't seen a rehearsal yet, I might skip numbers and I might say, okay, cue number 1 is at the beginning of the scene, act 1, scene 1, cue number 5 is the end of that scene, cue number 10 is the beginning of the next scene. So I might skip numbers, I might go like odds, or I might skip 5s, depending on how much I think I might add in there later. Now we've gotten more and more advanced in lighting consoles, so because of this, we've got more point numbers than we used to. On our consoles here we have, you can insert cues in between that are 0.1 through 0.9. However, on the more advanced consoles, you can do, especially when you get into moving lights, you can do point double digits, like 0.01, 0.09, so that you can insert things that you've thought about afterwards in between. Does that make sense? So that's the basic idea there. So cue number, and then we've got the next column which says fade time. Basically, how long is that lighting cue? Like, is it a sunrise? Is a sunrise going to happen in 1 second? Or is it going to be nice and long over a few minutes? Or is it going to take the entire course of the play? So one of the things you do is if you have a guess on what you think the fade time is, you write that in that column. Then the next column we have is line or action. Like, what does the lighting cue happen on? Like, does somebody clap their hands and all of a sudden there's light everywhere? Does somebody sing a song and there's light that changes? Does somebody close the door and it's the end of the scene and the lights go out? So you need to identify what causes the lighting change. Is it somebody saying something? Is it somebody doing something? Is it merely the end of the scene? That kind of stuff. And then the last one is the description of the cue. So we kind of write down our ideas, like we talk about it's blue, it's nighttime, it's midwinter, it's, you know, springtime, daytime in the garden. Things that help describe what we want to create when we actually sit down at the lighting console and we're trying to create what we want to see. Do you guys want me to kind of write that down? Actually, we might be able to pass this around a little bit later so you can look at it. Yeah?
I'm curious if the cue sheet is the lighting designer's personal tool, or is it something they share with the stage manager?
It can be both. So this can be something that you're just using to sit down at the console. But like what I've found is if I actually type out a cue sheet, like over at USC, I just finished their 3-show repertory for their MFA actors. The stage manager's like, hey, can you just email me your cue sheets? So I'll have a couple extra columns, like I'll have page number column so she can identify which page it is, and then I'll have the line as well. So she can find out where it is in the script that I'm talking about. Anything that helps her identify where it is and put it in the book. But sometimes I come in and I haven't done a cue sheet. I put cues in my actual script. So sometimes we'll do what's called a paper tech, and I will give the stage manager, like we'll talk through the cues. So that kind of thing. So I may not always do this depending on when working. So this is both a tool that you can just use, or it's also something that's very handy to email to stage managers so they have the cues. It's a quick reference list for them, so it's nice and handy. All right. Oh, and then here I just found on my desk this morning a Heart Mountain It's not quite a cue sheet, but it's kind of got initial concepts of what each scene has for lighting. So this is the same sort of an idea. In this one, he's got just kind of what it is, like prologue scene 1, and what the location is, camp office, Nakashima family, barracks apartment. And then basically he's got notes about what the mood is. And then he's got the interim scene. So he's just kind of got notes about each scene, like general notes about what the scene is, what the general look of it is. So he's kind of got what's also known as a scene breakdown. But you could use this as a cue sheet as well, depending on if you're just doing the simple looks for each scene. So that's also one of the initial ways to kind of do it. So basically the cue sheets and stuff are up to you to organize, but they give you as much or as little information as you want to set up. But those are the basic things, like what is my scene I'm setting, what time of day is it, what am I thinking. It could be that you're just talking about colors and like this is the one I want to use the ambers for, this is the one I want to use the blue lights for, that kind of thing. But it's notes to yourself so you know what you're trying to create with each cue or each
That
scene.
came from Purdue.
Did it really?
Yeah, and then I put little notes on it.
You put little notes on it?
I had to.
So yeah, so this is,
All right, look at prologue. Prologue, what's it say?
it just says camp office, Nakashima family barracks apartment, and then it
There's
says,
no prologue?
it doesn't say anything by prologue.
Yeah, the prologue ends up being like 7 keys.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's a Purdue show, so.
Yeah, so this is something the director might be thinking about lighting too. So those of you who are directors, or if you're actors, you might end up doing a show where you're producing your own show somewhere. I have a lot of actors that I've done shows for. It might be nice if you have very specific things in your head. Sometimes it's nice to do this kind of a breakdown for your lighting designer and say, this is kind of what I'm seeing for times of day, especially if they're not self-explanatory in the script. It might be that, you know, you have something, like I just did a show called 'Tis Pity She's